This is John Wedl. Thanks everybody for sticking in here with us. I started Wedl Placement Services back in 2003. And prior to that, I was in recruiting and staffing for a number of years with Robert Half International, and also helped start an internet job search company called techies.com when this thing called the internet came around, and we started to do live most of our lives via the internet, but especially job search. So that's basically my background. And the fun thing for me today is that a lot of the people that I worked with, a lot of the venture capital people, a lot of the owners and business leaders in the job board space when the internet had such a huge impact on our lives 25, 30 years ago, they are still in that human capital space and technology space. And so they're the ones that are coming up and inventing all the AI related technology that the world's being run by here today. So it's an exciting aspect for me to stay close to them, hear how it's affecting job search, how it's affecting companies that are using new technology to find and recruit people, and then certainly how it is for everyday people as well as injured workers and folks in our industry to find work. So it's an exciting time, and I'll probably say a couple of times throughout whatever I'm doing here, the presentation, that it's important that we all try to engage as much as we can with this new technology. I will admit it's a bit intimidating, it's a bit scary, depending on what you're doing with it. I would say we've already been using it for years. But I think the difference between ordering a cup of coffee via AI resources and getting a new job is quite a bit different. So there are differences, and we'll talk through those here today. So what I want to talk about throughout, and one thing I will say, Mike Hill had told me a couple of weeks ago that my PowerPoint, which has a fair amount of slides and pictures on it, was not compatible with certain pictures were not compatible with the presentation that he needed to be able to present to all of us. So he put together a new pictures and on the presentation. So it's not something I'm used to using. So forgive me if I get off track just a little bit, but. What I want to talk about basically is before we jump into AI and what's going on today, let's just take a step back and see where have we been over the last 25 years in terms of technology and job search. And then we'll spend a majority of the time on AI and how it's impacting folks. And then also basically how the specific tools and the things that our job seekers or our families or any of us looking for work will encounter during a job search. So if you think back to, let's just say the 80s, there is a lot of, things were a lot simpler. There was no technology. There was one thing that you would do to find jobs or to try to find candidates, and that was called the newspaper, the Sunday newspaper. Everybody knew that's where you went to look for jobs. All the employers knew that that's where they would go to make sure that they would contact the newspaper, the Star Tribune, by Thursday afternoon at 5. Otherwise, they'd have to wait another week before they'd post the job. It was a one-stop shop. It was pretty easy. Everybody knew the rules, and it was pretty straightforward. But then the internet came, and a lot of new options appeared. So in the 90s, if you remember when the internet came, a lot of employers thought it was great because, hey, they could post jobs real time, but nobody knew exactly where to go find them or how to find a thing called a website or eventually a job board. And most people took different levels of amounts of time to use the internet themselves. And as I was just saying, it's important to engage with this new technology. Those people back then that chose to just stick with the newspaper for maybe 5 years too long, really were affected when they were looking for work. I would say they missed a majority of the job postings, and it probably took them much longer to find work than they did if they were going to jump online and use the job boards. The big thing were the job boards. So monster.com, techies, a lot of those types of job boards. Really, it was very, very quick that where most of the jobs were online, and everyone knew that those were the new tools in town to be using. I think it got a little cluttered there for quite a while because too many employers were posting a lot of jobs, and I think it was a lot easier for candidates to apply to jobs versus in the old days when you need to put a stamp on an envelope, put your resume, walk it down to the mailbox. Today, you can just click, 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 and employers were dealing with thousands of applications per job, and it really got to be a challenge. So when social media came around, that was really kind of a big new trend in 2010s because it gave employers a great chance to really brand themselves and to build small niche communities. They didn't need to post it on Monster anymore because they knew that, hey, I'm just going to post it on Twitter or on Facebook or even on our corporate website, because if people are following those social media tools, they're interested in us. And those are the folks that we want anyway. So we're going to first focus there. And then, of course, we'll, word of mouth, internal referrals, and then the job boards would kind of be a last result. So things were definitely changing 10 years ago. And today, AI has really come to be this new technology or this new thing. And essentially, it's not a website. It's not a specific tool, but I think it's a technology that encompasses all things that we've used in the past, whether it's newspapers, job boards, internet websites, corporate websites or job boards. And it helps people get from A to Z much faster, whether it's a recruiter, whether it's a job seeker, whether it's somebody looking for a cup of coffee. It really has and will continue to make a pretty big impact in our lives in terms of what we are doing. It's still relatively early, although it's been here around for a while. It is coming on quite quickly. So with all this change, every decade it seems things are changing. Job search seems to be getting confusing, and it's like, well, wait a minute. So I'm not supposed to use job boards anymore, or I'm not on LinkedIn, or I don't know Twitter, or what's this new AI thing I'm supposed to be learning? It does cause some concern and confusion, but I would say hopefully at the end of this presentation you'll at least learn a little bit more about what different aspects of the technology is, and also that these aren't full-scale changes, but just an effort to make things a little bit easier for candidates as well as employers. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about AI. And Mike, I trust that you'll let me know if there are any questions as we go along. So Amazon defines AI, but when they define it, I think they use three really key words. It's learning, problem solving, and pattern recognition. And that's really how these computers and software are being designed to help recruiters, to help job seekers get from point A to point B much, much quicker. Now, AI, like I said, has been around for a long time. We've had Amazon and Alexa for a long time. We've had the ability to use our phones to know when our kids come home from school, and have home video services so we know who's knocking at our door or dropping off packages. I've had probably 3 video medical appointments myself over the last maybe 6 months with COVID. So things are continuing to grow very, very, very quickly. COVID has had a big impact on the video aspect, whether it's video interviewing, which we'll talk about later, or the video meetings and consulting opportunities with doctors, for example. But the interesting one, or one of the most interesting ones, was about 3-4 months ago when I chose to download the Caribou Coffee app for the first time, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll get some points for something, and I ordered my drink and my muffin or whatever I got, and it was fine, and it worked great. The next day, as I just so happened to be driving past this Caribou, I was not going there, but a chatbot came on it buzzed me on my phone and said, "Oh, looks like you might be stopping by again for your iced latte and blueberry muffin. Would you like this to get that order started for you again? And I thought, that's AI, right? That is how there's not a human being anywhere near that piece, that piece of communication. They knew what I've got in the past. They knew my past trends, my past purchase history. They know where I'm located, and they just are trying to be proactive in making life a little bit easier. I happen not to like that, so I went and turned off my location aspect of the Caribou Coffee app. But that's exactly how AI is going to work as we get into job search. You're going to be looking for something, maybe a chatbot might pop up and say, hey, I noticed that you applied to this position in the past. There's 3 other ones now that are available that are similar. Let's take a look. So we'll talk more about that here as we move forward. The big reason why I think AI is going to explode here over the next year is because of the speed in which we can move data. With 5G, we can download a 2-hour movie in 3 seconds. If you remember a number of years ago, when you were going on an airplane trip or something, you'd need to download a movie overnight. So because it took, 12 hours or 13 hours to download something. So that was 3G. 4G, it was maybe 25 minutes to download a movie. But with 5G, we can move an entire 2-hour full of video audio presentation in 3 seconds. So 5G isn't, all over the world yet, or certainly not even all over a lot of the areas that we live in and work in. But once it is fully engaged here, I think you're really going to see a lot more AI tools and inventions kind of moving forward here. So let's just take a quick peek at, okay, this is what's going on, but specific to recruiting. So like I said, 25 years ago or so, I was a recruiter, and when I would get, well, maybe not 25 years ago, but today, if a recruiter would get a new rec, they would need to post it on their corporate website. They'd need to go out and put it on Twitter. They'd need to go out and put it on LinkedIn. They'd need to certainly put it on maybe some newspaper websites and a few other things. Then they'd need to wait for applicants. Then they need to screen them. Then they need to try to set up interviews or maybe do assessments. And that's just an awful lot of work for one person to do on one job. If you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, once AI starts to get really, really involved in this process, which it already is, by the way, these bots will be able to search 24/7. We're recruiters, we could only do it, 8 to 5 if we were lucky. Maybe 2 to 3 hours of our 8 to 5 was dealt with looking for candidates. And then the technology will automatically assess people that are applying. It'll automatically send assessments if needed, automatically set up interviews, and that process is going to move from 1 to 2 weeks of time to do one job to 1 to 2 days. And that's really an exciting concept from an employer standpoint. But if you think about it, it's really great for the job seekers as well, because finding work, hopefully, down the road is going to be a much faster process. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. I think historically, job seekers have had concerns with how long it's taken to find work. You'd find people saying, hey, I don't know if they got my app or not. I don't know if I'm still on the running. I don't know if I'm going to get an offer. I haven't heard anything after my interview. So there's just historically an awful lot of question marks out there, and that the employers had all of the power. I think these are kind of the things that I think are really going to help job seekers from an AI standpoint. One, it's really going to improve their overall experience. The candidate experience is a phrase that a lot of these software companies are using. And think of it in terms of being more transparent. So today, if you maybe log on to your US Bank or Wells Fargo account, you have a dashboard. It tells you what your account balances are, maybe what due dates your bills are coming up on. And that's, I think, how it's going to happen here in the future. It's going to show these are the jobs you've applied for. This is what stage in the game you're at with each one. First one, you're not qualified. You've been removed from the process. Second one is you're going to be given assessments next week or an interview next week. So you're going to be able to see much more quickly where you stand in interview processes, and that's coming down the road. And I think that's really going to be great for job seekers. Also, it's going to, I think, help a lot with eliminating hiring biases. Humans make mistakes. Humans have opportunities to play favorites, and recruiters do it, too often. So I think more of an automated system is going to make it a little bit easier, and I think that's good news for the claimants and the injured workers that we work with. And also, it's also going to, it's going to happen everywhere. But even once you're employed with an employer, companies know that it's really hard to find people. And so once they're at your company, you want them to succeed and progress throughout the company as fast as they would like to. So AI is also going to help identify what skills you're using in your current job, what are the skills needed in the next job, in the general progression of where your career is going, and communicate that with you and with your manager to make sure that you're getting trained or doing the things that you need to get to where you want to be without needing to go somewhere else to be there. So AI is going to make a big difference with job seekers as well as with employees once they're where they want to go. Okay. So specifically, what technology, what tools, how is AI going to impact me in my job search? How am I going to see it? How am I going to feel it? There's a couple of different things. So we're going to talk about bots. We're going to talk about chatbots, video interviewing, text interviewing, and assessments. And that's what we'll cover here in the next half hour here or so. Okay, so bots, as you can imagine, is short for robot, right? And it's basically it's a program that is a general baseline program that's written to accomplish some pretty basic level things. And so think about it as in a retail environment. So if you went online to Macy's.com and you ordered a pair of jeans, you'd get an email back saying, "Thanks for your purchase. By the way, did you notice these white t-shirts or this sweater are on sale? They would match great with that along with these shoes." And you're also going to get an email in 2 weeks talking about sales coming up, and then in a month regarding holiday sales. And so all those things are all bot related. It's all program related and driven. They know what you've bought already. They also know what's going to match with that. And so it's going to make things a lot easier to say, hey, what do you think about this as well? Now, if you put that in perspective of a recruiter, see, we couldn't do that in the past. We're not going to call our claimants and say, hey, I know I haven't seen you applying to a job here for a while. I've got 2 or 3 to apply for. Are you interested? And we just don't have enough time to do that. There's just too many jobs, too many other candidates. So we can't be that proactive. So that's the big thing that I think I'm excited about, to say, hey, AI is going to really help stay in touch with candidates more if you allow it. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But that's going to be, I think, have a big impact on getting our claimants back to work. Probably the biggest bot that we come across today is the applicant tracking systems. So the ATSs, as we all know, or hopefully a lot of us know, basically look for keywords, look for qualifying requirements, whether it's education, whether it's years of experience, and it hits some pre-qualification data, so it can tell the bot whether to send it through to the hiring manager or not. So it understands descriptions, and it screens resumes, it grades, ranks, sends them to the recruiter if in fact they make it through the checklist. Now, not all technology is the same. So, for example, I think I'm using the same Microsoft Word software for the last 10 years. I mean, it works fine, so that's great. But ATS software that one company might have might not be as up to date and as full of the new bells and whistles as today's ATS software. So You may have some varying success rates with getting through to hiring managers using these bots, but I'm going to kind of really dummy this down and say these are the baseline things that you've got to do regardless of what level technology the employer's software system is working at. So for example, if we see a job description that's customer liaison, basic qualifications, answer questions, deal with personnel, work nights, weekends, holidays, that type of a thing. And then if you have a resume that says, customer service, meet and greet customers, handle cash, that looks like a great resume to me. And, and if you would apply to that, unfortunately, you wouldn't get through that company's applicant tracking system because the only similar word, or the only same word on that job description versus that resume is the word customer. Nothing else matches. And so applicant tracking systems really go by keywords as well as some other things as well. And a great resource to help your injured workers or to help people try to measure and say, hey, does my resume match well enough for this job description is to go out and use the JobScan website. And it's a free website. If you haven't used it before, you cut and paste your resume, you cut and paste your job description, and it will rank it. It'll rate it. It'll say, you're missing these 7 keywords. Your education is on track, but something else is light, or you're overqualified here or there. And it's a really smart way to do it because, again, the day and age of having one resume to apply to jobs with today is really kind of a thing of the past because it has to be tweaked for the specific job that you are applying for. So a lot of people say, oh, well, so all I need to do is just throw in a ton of keywords and what's called keyword stuffing into resumes. I think the smart thing to think about there is eventually an employer is going to be seeing it. A human is going to be seeing this eventually. So if they see in a section down at the bottom just random keywords just so that your resume would be seen, essentially they're going to know that. They're also going to probably look at it and say, yeah, this doesn't really qualify. It was really interesting. Recently, I heard of a concept called white fonting. So candidates were getting smart and saying, well, I'm still going to throw all those keywords down at the bottom of my resume, but I'm going to put them in white font. So you're not even going to be able to see it on my resume. And so that concept is already being discovered, and applicant tracking systems are pretty much on top of that already. So it's interesting to see how job seekers are working the system. But I think a majority of our job seekers are underthinking the system and do not take the time with every single job description to tweak the keywords. And I'm not saying just make up keywords to get it through. I'm just saying if your resume is close, uses similar keywords, but aren't the exact same keywords, like customer liaison, customer service, customer care, client services, a lot of those skills are the same, but you got to make sure you're using the same verbiage that employer is using. We all know janitor, maintenance, custodian, a lot of those can be pretty similar. Front desk, receptionist, admin. A lot of these words and job titles will be different from company to company, but essentially be the same job. So we want to make sure that we're using the same keywords that they're using in their job descriptions, and that's going to maximize your claimant's opportunities at getting through these ATSs. So how do you beat the bots when it comes to using applicant tracking systems? Like I just said, always customize your resume. Every single job needs to be updated for keywords. Don't use the easy apply button. There are some websites that it's similar to the Common app. If any of you have college students, there's a Common app. So now our students don't need to apply to every single, separately apply to every single college. There is a nationwide accepted Common app that you can fill out, and these colleges use your Common app a lot of times. But that doesn't work with the easy apply. You don't want that one resume because, like we just talked about, you need to customize it for every single job that you apply to. Get the resume format right. Follow the directions. I mean, that's the easiest thing. But some systems will work better with Word docs, with PDFs. But basically, just follow the directions that they're asking you to use. Keep it simple. Lines, graphs, shading, pictures, that alone will get you kicked out of most of these bots. And really, bottom line is, let's try not to just give it to technology and hope it gets through. Go the old-fashioned on it. Go the networking, contact people, follow up once you've applied. Referred candidates and warm candidates get interviews 2 or 3 times more often than cold applicants. So essentially, that's how these underlying computer systems and these algorithms are programmed for AI with this new HR-related technology software that a lot of companies are starting to use. Okay, so the next one, chatbots. Well, chatbots, are kind of a step up from the baseline technology. This is their communication system. So really kind of think of it as a virtual assistant. And what you'll see very often is you'll get, whether you're on a website or it might even be just an email or a text that comes from a chatbot technology to say, hey, we're interested in your resume or interested in your background. Would you mind taking a few assessments? Maybe it's on accounting software, or typing speed, or 10-key speed, or whatever it is, so we can assess your skill sets a little further before we consider bringing you in for an interview. So it's depending on how you're getting it. Sometimes, a goofy-looking computer chatbot will pop up on a screen, and that alone sometimes makes people nervous and wonders, do I want to communicate with this thing? I'm just going to wait for the recruiter to call me. Well, it is the recruiter, okay? This is the new way it's going to happen. If you don't communicate with these chatbots, if you don't engage with this technology, that is the recruiter. And so you want to make sure that people go ahead and communicate with these tools. And before long, you won't even know the difference, and which again can be kind of scary. But it's going to continue to get a lot easier for people. A, they're going to get more used to it, but B, it's just going to become more and more natural for us to utilize this type of communication system. Another place you're going to see it is on company websites, and today, unlike even 5 years ago, on job boards, you have a profile, you have a resume, you have a way for employers to take a look at your profile. But if you'd go out to, say, medtronic.com, and if you didn't find a job that you liked, you would leave. And employers know, hey, we can't afford to have people leave our website. If they're interested in coming here in the first place, we need to figure out a way to communicate with them afterwards if they weren't able to find something. So you're going to start to see a lot more set up a profile opportunities on most corporate websites now, where you're going to fill out your information, upload a resume, whatever it is, so that and again, so now these chatbots are going to know, well, they looked for a medical engineer job or a truck driver job or whatever it is, and then they're going to be able to start to communicate with you that way to say, we notice you searched for this on the 14th, and now we have that opportunity. Would you like to apply? So that only works if you engage with the technology. If you engage with these chatbots, or you give these company websites the opportunity to communicate with you and to know what your background is. Set up a profile so they see the history of what you're applying to or what you're even searching for, so that they know when something does come up to be a match, they'll let you know about it. Some really fun ways, I think, that chatbots have helped companies is that, for example, at the Cheesecake Factory, they were losing 70% of their applicants because they didn't speak fluent English and they couldn't make it through the application process. And so they designed bilingual bots so that everyone could make it through the application process, and it got a lot more qualified candidates eligible for hire at the Cheesecake Factory. At McDonald's, you can't officially get a job there until you're 18. A lot of people apply prior to that. Well, in the past, you would never get a phone call from a store manager once you turned 18, especially if it was a year or more ago. Well, now, on your 18th birthday, a chatbot will communicate with you and say, hey, happy birthday. I noticed you applied to this position 6 months ago as a front desk person. We have one available today at our such and such store. Would you like to come in on Tuesday at 3 o'clock for an interview? And so that is how bots are going to work on behalf of companies and really start to gain the communication aspect is going to be really, really cool in terms of getting more opportunities in the laps of our job seekers. A big thing too is too often as recruiters, we'll have people that obviously got the job, but then a handful of good qualified people that interviewed for it that did not get the job. We do our best to try to keep them in the mix on other opportunities, but too often I just don't have time to keep track of everybody and I lose track of them. Well, that's, chatbots or the AI is going to help keep track of these silver medalists is what they're called, people who ended at second or third in the interviewing process, and to be able to continue to communicate with them afterwards. They'll be able to look, for example, on their LinkedIn page, maybe once a month and say, hey, do they have this level of technology experience yet, or this new software knowledge yet, or this job title for a year or more yet? And so these bots are going to always be keeping track of people, whether it's on a job board, resume database, whether it's on LinkedIn, whatever it is, to say, hey, this person looks qualified for, we loved them in the past, let's get a note out to them and see what opportunities they may or may not be interested with at this point. So I really kind of think that the trend, the only thing we've ever known in the past is people looking for jobs. I really think that the trend is going to change to jobs looking for people here in the near future. So it's a pretty neat opportunity, like I said, for both the employers and the candidates. Video interviewing with COVID has exploded. It was coming on pretty strong prior to that, but it certainly is the number one way that companies are interviewing people right now, and or at least pre-interviewing. And so I'll talk a little bit about exactly how these the video interview technology is being used. So there's really two types of video interview. One is the type that we're all used to. It's the FaceTime. It's the Zoom meetings that you have with your friends and your family. It's the one-on-one video communication system that we're all pretty familiar with. But a big new application process opportunity that companies are using is the one-way interview. So they have an opportunity to send a message to a candidate and say, hey, we'd like to learn a little bit more about you. Can you answer these 5 questions for us on video? And then we'll follow up with you afterwards. So it is an opportunity for companies to not only just ask them some questions and expect some typed response, but actually for them to speak with them, get an idea of how they look and sound in some of these interview questions before they go forward with a formal interview. Now, like I said, the rate in which we're able to move technology today is just it's increasing so quickly. So if you're using cell phones, which we all do, are these Gen Zers grew up using cell phones, and so a lot of our claimants are using cell phones and may choose to use a cell phone when they take part with some of these video interviews. Now you may be thinking, ooh, that would be a bad idea, because I know kind of how they present and maybe how casual they are. And it's interesting, we have a partnership here at Wedl with a company that allows us to give free access to practice interviewing, video interviews with our claimants, with our injured workers. And we've seen some doozy practice sessions come back. And so, some things that you want to keep in mind. You're going to have those 2 a.m. movie watchers, and they're bored, and they thought, well, you know what, maybe I'll go ahead and try this video interview thing. So it's the middle of the night, it's dark, you're probably half asleep, and not a good idea. Maybe somebody just came home from softball practice and they have a half an hour before they need to go pick up the kids. They may just try to wing one out and get through a process like that. Others might not quite get how to use it and be a little too close. And also those that don't really pay much attention to their surroundings and also give a very bad first impression when it comes to doing these video interviews. So I don't think it's brain surgery, right? But it does take effort to do this video, one-way video interviewing and two-way. You want to be dressed appropriately. You want to have front-facing light. You want to go through give them opportunities to practice this stuff before they all of a sudden pop up. It pops up in their job application process, because it's happening all the time now. There is another aspect of video interviewing that hasn't necessarily caught on quite yet. It probably will, but facial expressions, facial recognition is going to probably be becoming part of the hiring process. So essentially, employers will know if you're lying or not. There is a company that's trying to put this out now, but from what I understand, it's going very, very slowly because companies are a little nervous about being transparent with their reasoning that, oh, a computer said you were lying, so you're out. I think that's a little risky here in today's world. So, but it probably is coming. It's just one of those things to be watching out for here in the near future. So how do you prepare for the video interviews? One thing I would say is they do vary in length of time. So if these one-way interviews, again, those opportunities to give short answers to some of their initial questions, sometimes those are only 30 or 60 second long answer period. So you want to make sure that people are prepared for that. Dress as you would for a regular interview. Make sure the lighting is front facing. Make sure your technology is working. The battery in your phone is charged. The internet is working. Make sure you have that good looking background, not too messy. Make sure that the dog's not barking and the kids aren't coming home from school anytime soon, that the phones aren't ringing and TVs aren't on. It's a real interview. It's a real first impression, and a lot of people will just not do very well, and unfortunately probably lose an opportunity where they shouldn't have to get an interview. So that's what's going on a little bit with video interviews. Mike, I guess I lost track a little bit at what time I started, so we'll just kind of keep an eye on that. So text interviews is becoming pretty popular. So again, cell phones are the #1 way that you can communicate. Emails oftentimes don't get looked at because they're on personal email accounts that people don't look at until the evening or until the weekend. And if you're an employer trying to communicate with a candidate that you're interested in and you can't get a message to them or a return message back until the weekend, it can be frustrating, and oftentimes candidates can be passed over for that way. So as a result, text messaging is occurring more and more often, and employers are having their software systems upgraded so that they can have the ability to text from their computers directly to candidates. And I would assume a lot of insurance companies, a lot of large corporations have that technology so that you can text people via your computer, because it's tenfold the speed in which you'll get responses back, which is a big deal, as we all know, and just being able to conduct our business. So a lot of the things that employers are trying to accomplish by doing this text interviewing, and when I say text interviewing, I'm not saying conducting an interview from start to finish via text. I'm kind of talking about pre-qualification questions, getting some additional information, types of information, so that candidates can make sure that they get back to employers in a timely basis. And we all know how we text. We know how we chat, and it's really important. Just like video interviews, it's important not to be too casual about it. So use proper grammar, no abbreviations, no emojis. Take your time with your answers, because you can. The employer is not texting you because they're expecting an answer in 20 minutes. They're just wanting it faster than they may be able to get it if they versus when they email you, which is overnight or over the weekend a fair amount. So that's more and more common. But I think the way to be more, the important thing to communicate with your injured workers are, don't be casual. No emojis. Do it as if you're typing a letter versus texting your spouse or your kids, kind of a thing. Okay. So assessments. Now, I think we all know that assessments have been part of the hiring process for a while. I would say they probably have gotten a little quiet over the last maybe 5 years or so or more. But with technology today, it's pretty cool how these assessments are going to work. So there's a company called HR Avatar, and in the old days, you would need to read a story and say, you're a cashier at the Gap, and a customer comes in and wants to return a pair of jeans without a receipt. What do? A, B, C, D. Well, today, you're going to work with a computer screen. You're going to work via video, like a one-way video interview, or a two-way, I guess, in this point, but the other side is going to be a computer. And this person is going to walk up to you on the screen and say, yes, hey, I'd like to return these. Oh, great. What was wrong with them? Oh, they were too big or whatever. Okay, do you kind of see your receipt? Oh, I don't have it. Oh, well, so you're having this communication with the screen, and these avatars, of course, know 72 different types of responses that you may or may not be giving, and knows exactly what to say and measures how you're going to deal with, a difficult customer or a difficult situation. So that's how assessments a lot of times are going to be working today. And also there is a really neat opportunity for virtual job tryouts. So there's everything from where you can literally walk through the door and behind the curtain and see the workplace and the department that you'd be working in, and the cafeteria, and a lot of the other things that you would have access to and be doing at that job. There are video training companies that maybe once you get the job, that you would use the virtual reality goggles and literally walk into a manufacturing environment and see the machines and get on a forklift and know where to go and drive through the warehouse, make your mistakes, do whatever you do in training for those opportunities. So a lot of remote, a lot of virtual, a lot of neat opportunities through technology that candidates will start to see through their job application process and even through their job training. So that's what's coming around the corner with AI from that aspect. Like I said, AI can be pretty concerning. It can be challenging. It can be to the point where you just flat out don't trust it. And developers and software companies absolutely know that, and they don't want this concept of the decision-making process of me getting hired somewhere happening inside a black box. They really want more of the glass box environment where everything is very transparent. Everyone knows that you didn't get a position because of how you scored on this or because of how you answered this, and it's on that dashboard, for example. That's what I talked about as you're applying to positions. They don't want people, and companies don't want to buy software that's going to put them in difficult situations to say, hey, you know, we don't like the fact that the software just made a big decision without our input, or however it's going to work essentially. So just know that that software companies are very, very cognizant of that, and they're keeping that taking that into effect. You know, bottom line is, I just think we all are going to need to become more comfortable, a little more open with using AI, especially as it comes to job search, because it's going to lead to missing job opportunities, missing interviews, missing a lot of things if people choose to shy away. And I think that these are probably the most common ways that they're going to be interacted with or asked to engage. And if they're comfortable with it, I think they're going to have a real good experience and opportunity to hopefully get an interview. So quick review on some of the things that we talked about. You know, get comfortable with AI. It's really going to, I think, help maximize speed in which you find your job and the speed in which hopefully you can get your injured workers back to work. You really updating those resumes with every single job posting that they are applying to. I know they don't want to. I know it's faster to not have to. But, you know, at the end of the day, do you want the phone to ring or don't you? So you got to make sure that you're taking the time to put your best foot forward and make sure that you're doing everything you can, kind of jump through the hoops, if you will, with AI, and doing everything you can with keywords so that your resumes are being seen. Increase your exposure. You want your resumes public on resume databases. You want your LinkedIn profile to be seen by other people. So it doesn't do you any good to be on some of these things, but having everything, you know, boarded up so people can't access it, or that these bots won't be able to find you. It's going to be critical that a lot of, you know, increase your exposure. You really want to be able to be seen and found by technology and by recruiters. Allow access to your social media and to your resumes. Be prepared for these video interviews because they're happening all the time. Engage with the bots when they're asking you to take time to do assessments, to do video interviews, whether they're one way or not. And really, a lot of times, as we were talking about with Cheesecake Factory, if candidates get frustrated or don't want to take the time to do a certain application process, they're going to fall off. Well, that's only a bonus to your injured worker. So if we can really encourage our injured workers to be persistent, be specific, and to follow through and make sure they do the entire process, I just think it's going to obviously increase their odds at being seen and hopefully getting called for an interview. So I kind of think I went a little fast there. I'm not exactly sure, Mike, what time frames we are dealing with here, but wanted to see what questions people might have.
You have until 2:15, John.
Okay.
Could you read the questions in the chat, or did you want me to try and find them for you?
Let's see. Yeah, I'll just go backwards here. So how many jobs will AI actually get rid of? Okay. This is not a concern with AI. Well, that's hard to say. I think it's pretty early to know. I've heard both sides of the coin, that AI is going to create a lot of jobs. Certainly in the technology world, it's going to create tons of jobs. But yeah, I do think that it could replace some jobs elsewhere. So I think, you know, industry by industry might be a bit different, but it'll add in some areas, detract in some, and maybe overall come out as a wash. That's maybe my guess. if you had to pick one, do you think a smartphone or a laptop is more useful in job search? Well, useful, I think, is going to be defined by how well your user knows it. So if the user is great with a smartphone, use a smartphone. If they're not so great with a user or a smartphone and they need something a little bit bigger, great, laptop. I don't think there's any difference from an employer interaction ability or inability. I would probably say that using a cell phone, you're going to have it with you probably all the time. So whether a text message pops up or you're sitting at one of your kids' softball games and you're checking your email and something pops up there, you may be able to get back with employers more quickly. But overall, if you're dedicated to your job search and you're checking your email every single day and being diligent with that, I don't think it really matters. Most smartphones and apps on phones work just as well. It took a number of years for apps to catch up to online websites, but now the apps are every bit as good as the real experience online. I think it says, let's see from Gwen, where do people with very limited technology skills fit with this approach to job search, and how do you assist them to fit better? Well, I think it's the knowledge of us in Voc Rehab to say, hey, we need to increase your visibility. You're not on a job board. You're not on a social media. You don't have a social media website exposure yet. We need to do that together, and it's up to us to train them and to get this type of ability to gain access to give them access to employers, or just to make sure that they fully understand that you very well might be asked to do a video interview. Have you ever done one? No. Well, let's jump on a Zoom call together. Let's do these types of things. So it's going to be up to us to identify, just like anything, where the gaps in this new equation is in the new world of AI, and make sure that they get, we all know that they're not going to become experts overnight or even over the time frame that we work with them. But it's a big difference between having something completely blindside somebody and they have no idea what a video interview is or why they're being asked to do something, and as a result, ignoring it, and being warned about it or told about it, trained a little bit about it beforehand, and know that okay, this is my QRC or my job placement person told me about this. I think I know how, but maybe I'll just call them quick and ask them a question before I dive into this. But I'm already feeling more comfortable and confident with this because they told me about it. So that's how we need to make sure we're training our people right now about this. Let's see. Okay. So a quick clarification, JobScan is a great tool, but free only for the first 5 scans. After that, it costs $89 for a 3-month trial. Okay, so that's something that that you may need to get have a conversation with your claimant with. But I think here's the other thing too. Once you do it 3 times, you're like, oh, okay. Oh, I missed these 3 words, or oh, I guess I forgot to put my additional certification on there because it told me I didn't have it on there. Well, I've got it. I think the confidence you're going to gain by going through it 3 times on JobScan is going to probably allow you to do it better, more effectively by yourself. That's just maybe my opinion there. So quick clarification, JobScan is great, but okay, good afternoon. Let's see. Okay. So anything else popping up here? I don't know if there was anything above that here. Okay. So essentially, and of course, if we were all together, I like doing a lot of show of hands. How many people have had their claimants go through a video interview, or how many have had recruiters communicate with them, or even chatbots communicating with them through text, or have done an assessment. More and more hands. I've been doing this presentation now for almost a year, and I've done it at IARP and at the Rose Conference and here, and so a lot of exposure throughout the country in different groups of people. And I would say every single time I'm doing it, more and more and more hands are going up. So it is definitely something that is picking up in popularity, and I'm going to just probably have a pretty good confident guess that we're going to see more and more tools coming along here as AI moves forward, and as 5G, I think, gets more into more metropolitan areas. Another person says, several of my clients want to, but cannot afford to embrace this concept. Not sure what that means. Julie, can you give me more information there? Nothing would cost anything that we're talking about. Again, artificial intelligence is just technology laid on top of current tools. So whether you're, if you're saying they're not able to buy a smartphone or a laptop or something, they can't afford the internet. Okay, well then I don't think it's any different than the old-fashioned, hey, then we need to find a library and a workforce center to go and learn how to use it there. So to me, these days, it's not an excuse anymore to say, yeah, well, I don't have a computer, so I can't do it. That just doesn't fly anymore. So libraries and workforce centers are where you need to go to do your training and engage. Any other questions here? Mike, can you hear me? I don't know if he said he's still shut down or what, but
I don't know if Mike can respond or not, but you had a great talk, and we really appreciate you being on. Our next presenter is David at 2:15. Were there any closing remarks you wanted to leave us with?
I don't believe so. I guess one thing I will say is it's interesting to note I work with a company called Avante that they're a technology firm that works with the staffing industry throughout the country. So they kind of track the trends of how many hours, how many temporary hours worked, how many candidates are out on jobs, for example. And obviously in March, a lot of people were out, and then it dropped 90%. And this goes by region and even by city. And just for the first time here this last week, and they lag a week, I believe, it showed a number of markets. They've been hovering at zero. A number of markets are still well down 20, 30%. But some markets in the overall number of people back on jobs have gotten back to that pre-COVID number. So I was pretty encouraged by that. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with, there's just so many unknowns with COVID, with the election, with a lot of things going on. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that employers may not maximize all the employment opportunities that maybe they had pre-COVID. They may hold back a little bit until after the year. But I definitely am seeing employers hiring. And for all of us in our industry, that's great news. So thanks for having me.